What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the LS Training Nutrition YouTube. Today, as you can tell by our title slide, we're going to be talking about ego lifting versus science-based lifting. We're going to kind of talk about what each one is and then kind of discern as to which one is better. So, with that being said, also if you're noticing different setup, we just moved some rooms around in my house, so now me and my brother share an office, which I actually love, believe it or not. I actually really like my brother, so I have no problem sharing her with him. But anyways, before we get into the rest of the video, please go ahead, like, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you know when we put out another one of these bad boys. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, first thing, ego lifting. Ego lifting basically comes down to there's not rhyme or reason as to why you're lifting a X amount of weight. Usually it's a heavy amount, an amount you probably shouldn't be lifting, and it's usually not what one calls optimal. Most people you'll find doing this 9 times out of 10, honestly, are high schoolers. I even ego lift here and there, depending on the workout. I went for 585 the other day, and it didn't work on deadlift. So, there's that. Is it effective? So, I don't know why I grabbed this. If I'm not going to take a drink. So, is it effective? Is actually no stats, like no statistical or empirical evidence saying that ego lifting is 100% the best form of lifting as for muscle growth, strength, whatever it would be. All the statistics say if it's a little bit more calculated as to why you're lifting a certain amount of weight and doing progressive overload, like specifically for powerlifting, that's going to usually work a lot better in your favor. So thus for you're going to want to maybe not ego lift. Also, you're going to find a lot of people doing this to what's it called? I just went completely brain dead. You'll find a lot of people doing this to just throw around some weight. Now, personal experience. I'm always gonna have a personal experience for you guys. If I do have a personal experience for said scenario, ego lifting. I ego lifted all throughout high school and up until I was about 19, and so I'm 20 now. And I got a lot out of ego lifting, but I also had a lot of newbie gains because of it. So I was able to make a lot of progress really, really fast with ego lifting as far as getting stronger. I gained a really decent amount of muscle with that time being a high schooler. So I started doing that when I was about 16 up until I was 19. So for 3 years, I basically ego lifted. I benched, no rhyme or reason as to what I was doing, how much I was doing it for. It was always lift a heavy amount. That was what the name of the game was. So is it effective? I would say yes, it's effective, but at a certain point, your body is going to need you to do it more calculated, because if you're not more calculated, you're going to start getting into injury risk. You're going to start you're just going to hit a huge plateau and you're never going to actually progress if you're trying to like PR every week. That doesn't work. Tried it, been there, done that, whatever. I have some friends that still do that, and I advise against it. In fact, one of my clients is about to hop on some powerlifting programming with me, and he's a big time ego lifter. So that'll be fun. But anyways, with that being said, yes, overall I would say it is effective, but up to a certain point, as all things are. So next, of course, we have science-based lifting. What is science-based lifting? Really, it's lifting based off of science, based off the name. Duh. Anyways, to further go into that, all that means is there is statistical evidence. So the difference between ego lifting and science-based lifting primarily is going to be there is statistical evidence and a lot of science and research studies showing that this form of lifting works better than any other form of lifting, or this specific movement doing it this way works better and is more optimal for muscle gains than any other way. And so with that being said, I'm sure you've seen on TikTok and Instagram of like I think they're called Keenan flaps or something. I don't even know the actual name of the movement, but I've seen it, and if you do Keenan flaps, no hate. They look stupid. I don't know why somebody would do that. It looks dumb. Also, it's very overcomplicated, in my opinion. You see a lot of science-based lifters doing a lot of extra stuff. At least all the ones that are like really famous outside of like Jeff Nippard. I actually really like Jeff Nippard, and he knows a lot about what he's talking about. And so that's like the one science-based lifter that I'm like, you know what, you do you, dog. Science-based lifting's not for me, but hey, you do you. And so, with that being said, because Jeff, if you've never seen Jeff, go look him up. He's just really knowledgeable about nutrition and sports in general. So nutrition, lifting, all the things as to what's most optimal. That's like his entire thing is science-based lifting. But anyways, most of the other people you see, they're just doing crazy stuff that's so unnecessary, and it's like, why are you doing that? Like, you're using a lot of extra steps that you don't need to use. Anyways, who's doing it? Anybody that usually it's people that don't know a lot, or at least a decent amount about just simple like body mechanics, exercise science, mechanical tension stuff. Like they think that mechanical tension and time under tension and truly isolating a muscle and whatever just is the most optimal way, which to an extent the science says it is the most optimal. However, the way that they're doing it is usually taken out of context. So, with that being said, is it effective? Based off science and statistics, yes, it is effective. So, now again, personal experience. I don't have any personal experiences with this. I've seen some science-based lifting work out really well for some people. I have a couple of friends at the gym that do a lot of Jeff Nippard's programs, which Jeff Nippard, I believe, does like a upper, lower, and then like full body workouts. Like that's because that's scientifically that is the best way to gain muscle. Apparently, who would have known? I'm sticking to PPL. I like PPL. This is the way I am. Um, which PPL that's worked well for me in the almost 6 years that I've been lifting. I would like to say I've made a really good amount of progress with that. I went from 255 to 179, and now I'm 230. All that being said, so that's all I'm saying. With that being said, now, which is better, ego or science based? Personal opinion, neither. Neither of them. Both of them suck, in my opinion. Now, again, this is all, again, I'm going to keep saying this, my opinion, personal opinion. That's what that whole tab is for. It's a personal opinion. I don't like either forms of this. I think you have to have a magical blend of both. Think you have to meet them right in the middle, and when you meet them right in the middle where it's calculated, but you're lifting a little bit like a meathead at the same time, you're going to have the best case scenario. I can't even think of his name right now. It's Hypertrophy Coach on Instagram, but that's basically like his whole thing. Because keep in mind, I am a bodybuilder who does like powerlifting for fun. So like off season, I'm a powerlifter per se, but I'm also really focused on gaining the most amount of muscle as possible. So I'm not always super worried about weight classes necessarily. I would like to go into the bodybuilding division, but if you're somebody who is strictly a powerlifter, you have to be calculated with your numbers to know how to peak your body to lead up to a certain point where you're lifting at your most maximum and your body's ready for that. So there is some like science and like technique and a lot of like time and like math and other things that goes into that. So everything to a degree is a little bit of science-based lifting, but pure science-based lifting, I'm like, that's dumb. It's basically the same thing as arguing the Mike Mentzer versus Arnold mentality when it came to lifting, which Arnold was ton of sets, tons of reps, and you'll grow. Which, if you've seen Arnold from back in the day, now granted, this man was taking a lot of extracurriculars, if you know what I'm talking about. And then there's Mike Mentzer. Mike Mentzer did one set of every exercise, and that was it. He maybe spent a total of 5 hours in a gym a week. I want to say that was in one of his interviews at some point. Like 5 hours maximum a week in the gym. I probably spend roughly 10 to 13 hours in a gym lifting purely. like I work in a gym, so I'm like in a gym at least 30 some odd hours a week. But like with that being said, so and then again, Mike was also very well built. So it's one of those things like you kind of got to look at both and be like, okay, this does work. This also works. What happens if I smash them together? Some things you can smash together and it work out really well. Actually, a lot of times it's like you get a blend and you'll have an insane amount of gains. But I think that with ego lifting and science-based lifting, it has to be a little bit of both. So, in my opinion, that's kind of like where you get powerlifting and bodybuilding. Like they're like right in that middle ground of everything. Because bodybuilding, you're trying to get the most amount of tension on a muscle to push it to a point where it's going to grow. And then powerlifting, you're trying to calculate, okay, if I time my lifts each week doing these numbers, by this week I will gain, say, 30 pounds on a bench max. Which if you gain 30 pounds on a bench max in a year, even like that's it's a big deal. It's a lot. Anyways, so statistics. There's not a lot of statistics on ego lifting, to be honest. That's why there's science-based lifting and ego lifting. So statistics say, and also a ton of research studies, science-based lifting is the way to go. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. There's a ton of research journals out there. You guys go look them up. But with that being said, science-based lifting statistically is the better one. However, and keep in mind, I am not an advocate for ego lifting at any degree. I am not an advocate for it. I think ego lifting at a certain point, I think it'd be really fun because I remember how much fun I had when I was doing it in high school. I also think it's really stupid. I think a lot of kids do these crazy lifts like I see on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all these other places, and I'm like, why are you lifting it like that? Like you're gonna like destroy your spine. Like that's a horrible idea. You like and pray to God they don't have glass backs because that's a whole nother problem. But anyways, so once again, personal experience. I did ego lifting for 3 years and I turned out okay. So, granted, I also didn't do anything too crazy. Like, I didn't do anything stupid. I knew where my max was, and so if I knew I couldn't lift 405, I wasn't going to try to lift anything higher than 405 until I hit 405. Plain and simple. I started ego lifting when I was like, I would have been like mid 15. And I developed to 405 when I was 16. So, whatever. And now I pull 500 on a weekly basis for like reps. So I'm chilling. But anyways, personal experience. At one point I would have told you ego lifting. At this point in my life, I'm going to tell you neither. I don't like either. I think you have to be calculated, but not if you try to overcomplicate it and get the most mechanical tension because it's most optimal, you're going to end up wasting a bunch of time. Just do what feels good, where you feel the best contraction. And again, this is if you're trying to grow your muscles. You feel the best contraction. It's a good amount of weight. Like you still have to train relatively heavy where you can still feel it the most. And sometimes it's like a little like magic spot that you got to hit. However, if you're a power lifter, you have to be calculated if you're trying to peak your body to lift an insane amount of weight. Especially if you're trying to do 9 lifts at a powerlifting meet. My good friend at the gym, he's also my boss. He did a powerlifting meet. I watched him go through his entire prep, and then watched him do a powerlifting meet. And in my head, because he was pulling some crazy numbers, I was like, dude, you did all that back to back to back. That's insane. He also had like 8 Rice Krispies in his system, so he was like chilling. But also at the same time, with that being said, personal experience, I'm going to tell you do neither. I'm going to say don't overcomplicate things. If you need some guidance on how to make a workout, feel free, DM me. I'll put my contact information in the description below. And that's not me trying to like rouse y'all into coaching. However, if you do want coaching shout out, feel free to hit me up. You know, I'd love to work with you. We do nutrition coaching and programming over here for workouts. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. hit the bell, like, subscribe, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.